on a large scale. All right, now we're recording. Right, so, and then aeration and oxygen is the other big thing. And then for me, everything that I do, I put worms in. I think they can help. So whether it's like during the composting process or after, and you can do that at all scales, and they'll just continue to work on the material. Okay, so here we go into the styles of composting. I do like to point out, again, there's plenty of hybrid styles of composting, but these are the large scale potential. They have hot composting or thermophilic composting, which a lot of us are, I'm sure, familiar with. You keep the temperature ideally within a specific range for a certain amount of time, and then you turn the piles for a certain number of times. And it depends on what kind of regulations you're following, if it's USDA certified organic or just state regulations that aren't certified organic. That kind of changes the amount of time that it needs to be at the composting temperatures, as well as how many times you have to turn the pile. So on a medium scale or a large scale, I guess, you can use a tractor with a front end loader to kind of push the material around. You put it in either a big mound, kind of like these pictures on the bottom here. You can also do a windrow, large row, with the bucket. But if you do more of a mound style, this is a super simple graphic I came up with, like one way that you can turn the material over. You kind of like partition it into thirds in your mind, and you would push the top third off and then kind of come back around and scoop the back side up, and that will be one turn. And so yeah, front or thermophilic composting is usually active composting, so you're checking it often, and it's batch composting, so usually you put everything in all at once. And then other kinds of windrow composting, tractor driven compost turner. So this would be, I suppose you could do large scale with this if you had enough. I mean, again, I don't know what the technical definitions of, depending on how much you produce per year as far as like medium and large scale, but these are similar units. One is just like a standalone. Backhouse is a popular brand. You can see in this picture, this lady's like literally standing on the unit, and it just goes through the windrow. And this one's driven by a tractor. That's the main difference. And you can produce a lot of material with these kinds of equipment. A lot of times it'll have a water tank on it, kind of like this picture in the tractor, and that way you can wet the pile up as you're turning it, and there's less spraying with hoses and stuff like that. So vermicomposting is composting with worms. Sure, we're familiar with that. The thing I like to point out here is at larger scales, it's common to pre-treat or pre-compost the material. So it adds another step, and it actually adds quite a bit of work. But then you deal with any plant seeds that are in the material, which the worms don't. They don't kill the plant seeds themselves. And you also kind of break the material down. You get it, starting to decompose, and the worms work through it quite a bit faster. But usually with pre-composting, you're doing like an aerated static pile or a thermophilic pile. So you're kind of doing 2 in 1. A lot of work. So you can do lots of different kinds of worm composting at large scale. You could do windrows, usually built by hand. And you just start in a pile, and you just keep feeding the front face of the windrow little by little. And they're usually shorter and not quite as wide as if you were doing a thermophilic pile with equipment. And then you've got this wedge system, which Arizona Worm Farm uses wedge, or they used to at least. I think they still do. You have a back on the pile, and then you have two walls, and you can make it as long as you want. And you literally have this triangle shape, and you just keep feeding the front face. And then once you get to the end of whatever your length is, you there's a way to kind of like flip it and make it come back the other direction. So it's an interesting method. It's not my favorite. It's hard to keep it moist, in my opinion, if you do the full size wedge, but it's kind of like a hybrid windrow-ish system. You can do super low tech, dig a trench and do kind of like pit, and it's usually continuous when you do a pit. The downside is like getting the material out when you're ready to harvest it. You know, you either have to get down in there or have equipment to scoop it out, or it's kind of backbreaking if you're bending over. But it's obviously super low tech, so it's nice. And then there's continuous flow through, or CFT. And these are, they look kind of like raised garden beds. And you feed the worms on the top, and on the bottom there's an open grate, and there's a cutting bar with a winch. It can either be manually powered or electronically powered, and the cutting bar goes across the bottom and drops the finished material out. As small as 4 feet wide by 8 feet long on these units usually. You can do like tiny CFTs as well, but for the ones that you purchase, they're usually 4 by 8. And then Michigan Soil Works, oh sorry, they're called Worm Gear now. It used to be Michigan Soil Works. They're a popular brand, and you can like link them end to end, so you can put like 4 or 5 of them end to end, and so then you have one really long bed. Then you have everybody's favorite Johnson Sioux bioreactors, or JSBs. And as Caroline knows, you can do a lot of these. And that's, you know, considered, you know, medium to large scale. But one thing I wanted to point out as well, as I've seen people do what is essentially a JSB style in many different shapes and sizes. So I've seen massive rectangular prisms. So, you know, like 30 feet long by, you know, 4 or 5 feet wide, and several feet tall, maybe like three or 4 feet tall. So you can apply the concepts to a lot of different shapes and sizes. I've seen the same size cylinder, but it's like stacked one on top of another. So there's definitely room to play with JSB. And then you have aerated static piles. These are pretty simple at the smaller scale, and like super complex at the larger scale. But it's basically blowing air through tubes that are buried under the material. This picture, you've got the bouncy house blowers and a bunch of PVC, and the pipes under the material have holes in them. But once you get to quite a large scale, there's like really fancy systems that have all kinds of tech that monitor everything to the last detail. They're usually covered with big old like silage tarps or something like that. Some municipalities use aerated static piles for composting a lot of material. And this is nice because it's another kind of set it and forget it for the most part, as far as turning, I guess I should say. I mean, you still have to monitor temperatures and things like that, but you don't have to get in there and do a lot of physical work for while the material is composting. And then this is my last slide. what I wanted to point out specifically with large-scale composting is the labor after the pile is finished. So, and again, it depends on what your goals are. But if you're trying to keep a lot of compost, especially in our climate, a lot of compost wet for an extended period of time, it takes either a pretty good setup for watering automatically, or it takes a lot of labor to water the pile or the windrow or whatever you have every week. So, I mean, you got to think about the labor before, during, but then also after the compost is finished. And the quicker you can get it out of your door and to wherever it's going to rest, the better. So that's it for me. I'll stop sharing here.
Thanks, Casey. Great overview. Well, yeah, and I'll open it up for questions for Casey or comments. I will start by saying you're absolutely right that moisture is the most critical management element for especially composting out here in the desert. When I ran the compost facility on the West Mesa, I was blessed because we had more moisture than we knew what to do with. With the biosolids coming in from the treatment plant, it was just like that stuff was 85% moisture. And it was also organically bound moisture. So when you mix that into a windrow, you were good for the whole life of the windrow. But I think, as Justin and Dawn are going to tell us in a minute, keeping yard waste and food waste windrows moist enough is a true challenge. So I'll just offer that information and ask others to weigh in with questions or comments if they'd like. Carol Ann, what do you have to say about those Johnson Sioux bioreactors? I put her on the spot.
I'm finishing my burrito. I apologize.
Oh, yum.
There's a chili relleno. I think what's really neat about the Johnson Sioux bioreactors is that they're very versatile. As Casey was saying, you can do a lot of different experimentations. And so we have, I think now about 71 Johnson Sioux, but ours are modified. And so we are adding about 600 pounds of food and 1,200 pounds of shredded wood to the bioreactors, but we're also adding biochar to maybe half of them. Again, it's kind of an experimentation process. And we put the food through a garbage disposal so that it's called a food slurry, so that the Johnson Sioux don't go anaerobic. And what we're finding is really great results. Some people are, Johnson Sioux traditionally is not a high temperature composting system, and ours get up to 140s, 150s easily within a few days, and they can stay there for a couple weeks. We had a mycologist from Holland visit recently, and he was concerned that those high temperatures might affect the microbes growing. And so we started opening them up. And in the preliminary testing, using the microbiometer, we're seeing that at 12 months, which is pretty young, 12 months time, we're getting about 1.2 to 1 fungal to bacteria ratio with a good amount of biodiversity. If we wait 14 months, that's about 1.9 to 1 with more microbes diversity. And then at 16 months, we got 2.9 to 1. And so for the way that we're doing it, we really think that, waiting 18 months might be really optimal because we can start selling it now as a really high quality compost. It smells great. It looks good. People are like, wow, this is awesome. But we really do want to sell it as an inoculant. So we like to have the ratio a little bit higher. And I did send samples yesterday off to Corvallis, Oregon to get a professional laboratory analysis. So we'll see what they say for that 14-month sample. We're doing some more experimentation by actually putting some veggies and some cover crops on top of the bioreactor. We're growing food in the bioreactor so that those, well, first of all, it's a protected environment, no gophers, no deer. We're watering it anyway. And so these vegetables are awesome, tomatoes. And then we're hoping then that the seeds, because they're grown in, these roots are in such really high biodiverse areas, that the seeds are going to have their full microbiome complement to them. So it'll be really high quality seeds as well. So far so good. But, you know, I think really experimentation is the key. And we are really happy to have received local funding for a permanent structure so we can have a community classroom and a laboratory for a really nice microscope that we recently got. And so we're getting a lot of community support, and we're really excited about that.
Great. Thanks for that update. All right. Any other questions or comments? We kind of need to move to Don and Justin to stay on track. But any last thoughts here? All right. I'm going to turn it over to Don and Justin. Do you guys need to share? You can share your screens if you want.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen. Can you hear me? Okay, good. There might be some background noise. I am in the Phoenix airport because I just finished touring the Phoenix municipality composting operation, which was really cool. And I can talk a little bit about that. And thanks, Carol Ann. It's always great to hear from you. Let me go into presentation mode. Okay, so first I'll do just a little background on us. For anyone who doesn't know, Justin and I acquired Soilutions in 2021 from Jim and Karen Brooks. Had been around since 1996. We had entrepreneurial aspirations, and turned out we knew someone who knew the owner, being Steve, who's my dad. And so we were able to get hooked up with them and acquire it. And for the first couple of years, Justin and I weren't that involved quite yet. We still had our regular jobs as we kind of built it up. But I came to Soilutions full time in November. So I'm now 7 months in, only doing Soilutions. It's been really fun, and we've learned a ton since then. So this is an aerial shot. We invested in drone technology in January to help us manage inventory. So we now fly a drone over our site 3 times a week, which enables us to measure the pile size from the sky, and also just plan strategically for the way the site's going to be laid out. And so this is what our site looked like in September of 23, which was our first drone flight ever. And I will say it was disorganized. I think over the 20 plus years that it had been in operation, Soilutions had grown organically, and stuff had kind of gotten stuck here and stuck there as they grew, with not a lot of structure or systemization. And so they were doing a static pile system, and that's what Soilutions had always done. And the issue we found with that is when we took over, we increased marketing pretty quickly. My background's in marketing. And before we knew it, we found that we had tripled the size of the company, and we had no more compost left to sell. And so we were far outpacing our ability to produce and meet the demand, and we were having to source from other companies. And then we decided we don't want to source from other companies. We bought this business because we want to divert from the landfill, and it's all about sustainability. And so we got with Steve to do some consulting at the end of last year around how we can reorganize our site to be able to produce more and divert more from the landfill. And so with this site layout that you see here, which was last year, we never knew where anything was. It was disorganized. I think about the max we were able to produce was about 5,000 yards a year, 5,000 to 7,000 yards. And again, it's before we had the drone. So it was a lot of guesswork. It was a lot of walking off piles and measuring. But our best guess is we were producing about 5,000 to 7,000 yards per year. And so we got with Steve and made the decision to transition to an aerated windrow system. And Justin and I also went through and completed the Ellie Ningham Soil Food Web foundational courses. We consultants, but we've gone through her courses. And so we wanted to learn. It was like, left my job. We were finally diving in 2 feet first at the end of last year and ready to kind of like take this to the next level. And so we worked with Steve to completely reorganize our site. You can see here how different this looks. This, oh, sorry, I clicked in. This is a shot of our site from a few weeks ago. And it's supposed to, let me show you guys a video. We started in January, and it's been a tremendous undertaking for our team. They've done a fantastic job and worked so hard to transition. And here is really quickly, if it'll load for me, I'm in the airport with not the best Wi-Fi, so let me, bear with me. Let's see if I can get this to play. This is just an aerial video. A flyover of our site. And so we're still in the process of this. We're only 5 months into this transition. So you can see we've got the windrows here. We were finishing selling through our old static piles. And so this entire site will be filled with windrows. We're planning to have about 16 to 17 active windrows at any time. When we build the windrows, they're 1,000 yards. We use a calculator, which was created by Steve in the 90s, actually, but it's adapted from Cornell. And so it's an inputs calculator to come up with our nitrogen and carbon ratio, very akin to kind of what Elaine Ingham does as well in terms of the proportions to find the right mix. And then we invested in, I think that's enough of that for you guys. Can everyone still see this presentation? Sometimes my screen sharing goes weird. Am I on the slide? Yes. Okay. So then we acquired a windrow turner because we realized pretty quickly that trying to turn windrows with front loaders was not going to was not going to turn them in the uniform way that we needed to get all of the different parts of the pile into the hot center to be able to reach that hot enough long enough. And so we acquired a windrow turner, and we are now running these windrows through and a 6 to 8 week process of multiple turns. We're getting temperatures up to 165 often. And then after that, we're moving them to a cure period. And so you can see these are kind of cure piles over here for that proliferation of the fungal bacteria, fungal populations. And so the biggest learning experiment that we've come from in the most recent months is maintaining moisture in these windrows has proven to be challenging. And so what we just invested in is we are partnering with a company who is constructing a watering system for us, which will be mounted on the turner. And so we're going to have 2 huge water tanks on each side with injectors so that we can water the windrows when we're turning them. And we're going for OMRI certification, which means we need to turn the windrows 3 times in the first week. But we've also just learned about how wet we need to make our pads before we build our windrows. And, you know, so we're still in a lot of learning, but it's enabling us to increase our manufacturing capacity 3 to 4 times. So when we're finished and we've got all our windrows built, we're going to be able to produce 20,000 yards per year with a much more predictable product quality and consistency. It's like much more scientific. I don't think we ever were using calculators for recipes in Soilutions history. So we're really, really excited about this. This transition we've made. It's been a huge undertaking, but we think it's going to be well worth it. And it's actually enabled us to accept this opportunity that kind of came up. Because one thing we realized when we were building the windrows was, for the first time ever, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of inputs, and we're going to run out of inputs quickly. We don't have enough food waste. We don't have enough grain waste. And so we were able to, because we moved the windrows and had so much more manufacturing capacity, partner with a company called Denali, who works with Walmart and Costco. We also restarted a Whole Foods partnership that had been defunct. And we're now processing more than 100 tons of food waste per week through our facility, which for us, in terms of our sustainability goals and kind of our passion and the reason we did this, is really incredible. Let me mute this. And this just gives you the scale. This is 1 truck from Walmart. We're receiving 3 of these trucks per week. Sorry about the loading time. And so super grateful to Steve for all the help he's given us. So lucky he's in the family because he's done it mostly for beer as payment. And that's it. We're moving to windrows so we can produce 4 times as much. And our biggest challenges have been sourcing inputs and managing that moisture. And so we're hopeful that this windrow injection system is going to help. But we've also found a lot of success in having our team has been tweaking with, we build the pad before we build the windrow, and how wet we are able to get that really makes a difference in how much moisture the windrows are able to hold. We're also going to move toward playing with tarping our cure piles, just to kind of keep that moisture in during that fungal proliferation period. We've partnered with enchantment mushroom farms to get their spent mushroom blocks. And so we're going to be testing inoculating the cure piles with the mushroom blocks at various points. Something Eleni talks about as well. So that's it. That's my quick and dirty presentation here in the airport. And I would love to hear any questions or feedback.
Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, that's exciting. That's a very exciting and challenging transition. I know. Well, I know firsthand how exciting and challenging it is. So, but personally proud of you guys for moving toward a more controlled quality and quantity model. You know. And I know that there has been a requirement for some significant investment in equipment to make that happen. And I'm no businessman, but I'm totally trusting you guys on all those decisions. So anyway, that I just open it up for any questions or comments on what Dawn has shared.
Thank you. Carol Ann and Josh, do you both have hands raised? It looks like. Carol Ann, do you want to go first?
Oh, Carol Ann, okay.
Yeah, well, gosh, Justin and Dawn, congratulations. This is super exciting. Well, I just kind of get goosebumps. It's really cool. What kind of contamination do you find in the food? Is there a process that you have to go through, or is it pretty clean?
Let me tell you, when we were going to start getting Walmart, I was really worried. It's impeccably clean from Walmart, impeccably clean. They have very ambitious sustainability goals. And actually, the reason I'm in Phoenix is we're looking at partnering with Denali to get depackaging equipment licensed through them on our site so that we can get more from Walmart. But right now, what we're getting from Walmart is fruit and vegetables, which are very clean. The Whole Foods is also really clean. When we bought the business in 21 and we were kind of brand new, Whole Foods was active, and the current team on the ground said, you have to pause it. It's full of trash, so contaminated. And so before we were kind of both feet in, we paused it to support the team on the ground. But when we started back up, we said, we can manage this better. And so what we've done with Whole Foods is just take a really proactive front end approach. We're doing trainings with their team. We just had them out to host a tour at our site. We're going out and meeting with the department heads quarterly and just helping them understand that we're real people that have to pick out the trash when it's in there. And it's made a huge difference. They're doing a fantastic job. So I would say the food waste contamination is really minimal right now. And we're just really grateful for that. Josh?
Josh, yeah.
I just started some aerated static piles of my horse manure and municipal wood chips, and I was wondering, I'm sort of following the guidebook created by Kavira and Reunity, so thank you, Amy and her team over there for that. And I was wondering about, my question is, how long do you run? What's the interval on your air blowers?
So here
we don't
we
use
have
air blowers.
Yeah, here we have a terminology difference. Aerated static pile is technically the air blower technology, where, like Amy's going to talk about in a minute, what you guys are doing in Soilutions is more accurately just called the windrow method.
Okay.
They're aerated.
So yeah, we aerate by running a turner through it.
Right.
Gotcha.
So they're not.
We just run a windrow turner over it to aerate it.
And they're not. Therefore, they're not static. Actually, they're quite active. So that was a difference in terminology that kind of threw Josh off, because they're not using any kind of blowers or under windrow piping. Their aeration
Gotcha.
is via the scarab. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I guess if there aren't any more questions, that's a great segue. Thanks, Dawn, for that. And
I think Sarah might have one.
Oh, it looks like, yeah.
I think
Sarah-
Sarah's raising her
Sarah?
hand.
Yeah, there she is. Hi, Sarah.
Thanks.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sarah +1. Who's your guest there?
yeah, I'm at the cafe counter here, making it work here at the kitchen. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really cool. And I came today specifically because I really have questions about scale. Obviously, for a little context, I think a bunch of you know, but I've been working with Sandra at the city here at Three Sisters Kitchen doing a consumer and compost program, which most of the stuff we're producing from that is fiber-based stuff, BPI certified bioplastics. And obviously one of the big transitions that Soilutions went through in the scaling up process is an inability to deal with some of these products, which after talking and understanding what the bigger goal is, I get it makes 100% sense. So I guess it's a question for Casey and anyone else in the room who's really thinking about scale in where these fiber-based and BPI certified products might go best in the desert environment. That's my big question right now. And two, if there really isn't a place or a scale that's working in our arid environment right now, thinking about a life cycle assessment of these fiber-based or BPI products, is it still worth us buying them and knowing that they're going to a landfill? And I'd just love to open the floor with this group of experts and hear any thoughts anyone has.
I'm sure others will weigh in, but I will recount a story when Sandia National Laboratories brought BPI certified, fully compostable plastics up to the city facility on the West Mesa, which is in fact the largest composting facility in the state so far, and the most heavily managed. And we were unable to get those things to decompose. Over a year of exposure to a very, very high level activity compost regime. So in my hands, at least, I don't know where they can successfully fit in a desert environment. I'll let others weigh in, but to me, it was just really eye-opening to see that they lost 0 grams of weight over a year of exposure to one of our extremely high activity windrows. It was many years ago, and it wasn't the bags; it was the cups and the forks and all that. So, others?
I haven't done much composting of that stuff on myself. I mean, I think from my understanding, it depends on like what it's made of. For one, I think a lot of the compostable plastic products still have some nasties in them that don't fully break down, which is why I haven't done the research myself. But I didn't want to put anything in my compost. But I would think your best bet would be, I mean, trial and error, but a hot pile that's active to test it out. But from Steve's experience, maybe that wouldn't work. But I would say that's probably your best bet. But yeah, it's hard. I don't think we're there yet with the technology to feel confident in like that it's actually a good alternative, in my opinion.
Good question.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this separately, Sarah, but we also had the same experience in our static piles of just not being able to get it to break down. And when we decided to scale and go for the OMRI certification, OMRI doesn't allow them to be in your compost if you want to get that certification. But it also, because they weren't breaking down, we were just spending too much labor and making our team go through and pick it out of our finished piles after they'd cooked for a year, and we still have this plastic and the cups, etc. And so it's kind of like we had to narrow what we can expect to scale, but we're hopeful that someday, as that technology continues to improve on the BPI side, it's not, we're not closing the door to it forever, but for now, we're just not able to process it, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say that it was how that material was arriving to our facility as well, right? So we weren't just getting 1 or 2 cups. I mean, you have tower stacks of maybe 20 cups stacked individually inside of each other, which just creates much more of a kind of just a block of plastic. You know, if they were individually separated, then they would have more surface area exposed to the thermophilic composting process. More moisture maybe could, you know, help break that down. But when you're just getting, yeah, and you could see it from the people that are getting rid of these plastics, they're trying to package it in a way that minimizes the space for transportation. So they just stack it all together and it just gets clumped together. But then we don't have you know, the ability or the labor or the time to then separate each individual cup and then, you know, disperse it throughout the composting process. So whether it was the cup or the cutlery, this stuff would just come in bulk and it wouldn't, you know, have a good way to be separated for true composting to take place.
Yeah, and I personally think maybe some size reduction ahead of the composting, that would I be grinding or shredding would probably be necessary to effectively address that stuff. So we will be interested, Sarah, in what you discover at Three Sisters Kitchen. For sure. Okay, in the interest of time, let me turn it over now to Amy to talk about the aerated static pile, the official aerated static pile operation that she's been involved with.
Great, thank you. I'm going to try and share this slideshow that I did with the NMSU, the Sustainable Ag Science Center out in Alcalde. So I'm going to probably kind of cut through a few slides because this was sort of a half-hour presentation. So I'm not going to be focusing on all of this too much, but I thought it's nice to have some pictures. So I think I know most of y'all. And first of all, Casey, thank you so much for putting all of those resources together about the different compost systems and the different scales and, you know, all of that. I think I will be directing a lot of folks, you know, who have lots of questions about all the different options to that, which is fantastic. And it's so great to see all of the images from Soilutions and to kind of know a little bit about the history and to see how far y'all are coming and what your, you know, vision is for the future. It's just so impressive. So thank you both for that. My name's Amy. I'm with the Aerated Coalition, and we really focus on helping producers think proactively about I like those air quote the waste on the landscape, really from the rancher or farmer perspective. I think that we're all really familiar with, you know, compost and how we can use it in smaller scales, home gardens, you know, to even larger irrigated cropping systems. But we're trying to also promote it to use within rangeland, pasture management scenarios as well that don't have the irrigated moisture and watering. And so that's kind of a new area that we are exploring, and there's all kinds of you know, new research to be had, new understanding of how compost or organic amendments work within a rangeland system. So in the talk that I did before, we kind of did some deep dives on compost, but as I think I had mentioned, so we're within different projects. We've either in the past focused on helping producers learn how to providing the technical support to produce organic amendments on their farm or ranch, either through aerated static pile systems, vermicompost systems, and we've also done biochar production. And then we coupled that. Are all y'all seeing the slide? Is it in slideshow mode? Okay, cool, thanks. And then we've also had different projects where we've then taken biochar that we've purchased or compost that we've purchased and applied it on the landscape for doing sort of maybe not so technical research trials, but more case study style trials, including organic amendments that involve bale grazing, which has been around for quite a long time, which effectively is, you know, you put a big block of hay on the surface that may have more bare ground, may, you know, need some more fertility. You have the livestock graze it down to about 25%, and they kind of mix it in with their urine, their manure, and you have this sort of compostable material that's ready to go and compost in situ. We're embarking on a new project. We're kind of putting a lot of those pieces together. So not only the organic amendment production, also the application in conjunction, I think, with pasture planning, which I'm really excited about. So how can we think about adding organic amendment in the form of compost, biochar, mulch, in conjunction, in collaboration with their pasture management. So if they're thinking about doing rotational grazing, how can the spreading of compost or biochar support that process of pasture planning? Because really, it's the animals on a rangeland situation that are going to have the most impact on restoring the health of that grassland. So how can the application of that amendment support, you know, your goals for pasture planning? In addition, providing marketing and business support and workshops, along with monitoring and evaluation of that process. All y'all know the healthy soil principles, so I won't talk about that, and the benefits of compost. We're all pretty familiar with that. Here's the 3-bin system. Yay! Casey! And hey, wait, where is this location? Do you know, Casey?
Yeah, that's the Santa Fe Botanical Garden.
Oh, cool. Nice. Excellent. So let's see, we're not talking in there. So, you know, similar, we were talking about scales of compost systems, and we've seen these before. Let me just, Johnson Sue, Casey talked about that already. Oh, the aerated static pile system. So in response to your question, Josh, what I'd been told by Trevor at Reunity is that you want to kind of gauge between 15 seconds to 30 seconds every 30 minutes. So, you know, you might want to do shorter time periods if it's, you know, if you feel like you're losing too much moisture to that process, you can do as much as 30 seconds, but you want to do it, you know, twice an hour for, you know, during day and night cycle. And as I understand, it's for, you use a blower system for a full month, and then you can take it off of the blower system and let it cure for another month or so. It's sort of the general loose guidelines that Trevor had mentioned. What's good about, what works really well within a ranching context is that these aerated static pile systems are mobile, they're scalable, and they don't require a lot of infrastructure. So even if you had an electrical source that, you know, you can hook up to a solar powered you know, area, then that blower will work from that. I agree with Casey that, and I think I heard from everybody here that the moisture, you know, from the start is critical. Let's see, what else can I say? Oh, and then just different ways to apply. So we've been, you know, you can apply, you know, put your material in a truck and hand shovel it in various spots that you want to address on your field. What works better, however, is if you have a manure spreader, you know, setting that on the lowest rotation and the lowest sort of gear on your tractor to really kind of let that material spread as kind of in a thin layer as possible. You don't want it spread super thick. Also, you know, making compost tea is an option for a different application. And then, yeah, then we have resources. We have a couple of cost benefit analyses for compost, and then our rural dryland composting, biochar, and soil health workbooks are also online. And that's all I got. I'm gonna stop sharing here.
Sounds like
1 minute to go.
Yeah, you did great. Amazing. Yeah. And that is awesome that you guys are doing that. And I'm not familiar, after years of working in the compost field in New Mexico, of any other aerated windrow operations in the state. So there was in Sandoval County a enclosed system with tanks and blowers and stuff, but I guess that could be considered. Well, it was force aerated, but it's not a windrow system. It's much, much more complicated, and everything, as predicted, got so clogged up they had to shut it down. So that's unfortunate, but the aerated windrow system is much more resilient in my mind, and it's my only concern, as with any compost, is in New Mexico, is keeping the moisture level up.
That's so true.
Rising air is going to pull water vapor with it.
Yeah.
So 30 to 60 days, and then 30 days of curing. That's interesting. And are you getting good buy-in from ranchers, or no? Not yet.
So let's see. I have done maybe a handful of aerated static pile systems. So I'm going to actually circle back around to somebody in just north of Mora to see how their compost production is working. I think when folks have the feedstocks on hand and they have a reason to make it, so they're doing like a veggie production in addition,
Right.
For example, that's reason enough for them to like want to try it. And so I'm curious to see who will keep going with it. Yeah.
Because it's, you know, all composting is work.
Yes, it is.
It takes effort. So when you're busy trying to rotate your cattle and take care of pasture and all that, you know, it's like, I don't have time for this. So fingers crossed that they adopt this and make good use of it, because Lord knows our rangelands need the help. They are just so depleted here in New Mexico. So well, we're 2 minutes over, but any other questions for Amy or comments? There have been a few here in the chat. Josh popped one in there. And if Donald, if you would share who you are and what your affiliation is in the chat, that would be helpful. It just says Donald, so we'd like to know who you are. You may have been here before, but I don't recognize your name, so I'd like to know who you are before we end this session. I don't know, maybe
they're up.
There's Donald. Listening in. He's jumped on. Okay. Great.
Oh, there you go. He just added. Yeah.
Good. Welcome, Donald. In Gallups and Grants. Oh, nice. Great. Good to have you. I hope you found this session useful. I did record most of it. Sorry for forgetting to start it before Casey got kind of into the first few slides, but I think we captured most of the important stuff. So I'll share the link with Isabel, who can then share it out with her list. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all again next month. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for facilitating. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Bye,
Awesome.
All
everybody.
right.
Bye.
Take care. Keep composting.
Thanks, everyone. How do I leave?
I will just turn it off, Sarah.
Okay.
I'll end it. Here we go. Bye. Oh, and we're going to be working with you at CEDON on a food waste and composting, like EPA. No, it's USDA.
Tell me more, because Annie mentioned this, and I was like, "Oh, that's the first time I heard."
Yeah. So the people in Corrales, what's the? I forgot. Something farm, indigenous food hub.
Oh yeah.
Those guys. They're going to be taking in waste produce or reject produce to make compost, and anything that is still edible, so to speak, is supposed to go to you all for processing into an edible format, so that whatever the spoiled parts get removed, or the ugliness gets, removed, or whatever, or apples become applesauce, or whatever the heck. So that's the Three Sisters role, is taking the still functional produce that Indigenous Farm Hub receives that's not quite ready for composting, and y'all can make edible products out of it and sell those.
I love that. This is the first I've heard of it. I'm thrilled though, and I'm absolutely, as kind of the point person for our food waste prevention programs, I would absolutely love to be in and yeah.
Well, give me your email if you will, and I will send you a link to the proposal.
That'd be great. It's Sarah, so Sarah.
Okay.
At threesisterskitchen.org, and that's 3 spelled out.
3 spelled out. Okay. 3, no punctuation, just threesisterskitchen.org.
Yep.
Okay. And right after this,
that's so cool.
I will send you a link.
That's always been one of my dreams of how do we utilize our kitchen facilities to think about a larger network of food waste prevention, and that's a piece of it that's really excites me and that we haven't done yet. So it'll be really cool to experiment and see what's possible.
Okay. And we have hired a new person at CUDOD, Soil and Water, to oversee this project, and their name is CJ Ames.
Okay.
So I don't have an email for them yet because I don't think they're on payroll. They're that new. But I will put you in touch with CJ as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I'm really looking forward to doing more collaborations together.
Absolutely. What's your last name, Sarah?
Horowitz.
Horowitz. Okay.
Yep. HOROWITZ.
WITZ.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I have a friend, Mindy Horowitz, but it's the middle O is missing.
Yeah.
It's just Horowitz.
There's a bunch of us out there.
Yeah. Good family. Okay. All right. I'll send you a link to that, Sarah, and put you in touch with CJ as soon as they come on board.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Okay. Take care.
Cool. Facilitating
Bye-bye.
today. Stay in touch. Bye-bye.